الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue, 7:52 p.m. Thursday, February the 24th, 2022, where the Hijri calendar was the night of the 24th of Rajab. Technically, it's Laylatul Jumu'ah, the night of Friday, in accordance with the Hijri calendar. Where it's the 24th night, this Layla Mubarakah, inshallah. With the year on the Hijri calendar is the year 1443, after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. As we were continuing in the explanation of Fataawa al-Hamawiyyah al-Kubra by the great Imam Taqiyuddin Ahmad ibn Abdul Halim ibn Abdul Salam ibn Taymiyyah, who died 728 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, you'll find that he continues to say, وَالصَّحَابَةُ وَالتَّابِعُونَ لَهُمْ بِإِحْسَانٍ وَمَنْ سَلَكَ سَبِيلَ السَّلَفِ وَهُمْ فِي هَذَا الْبَابِ عَلَى سَبِيلِ الْإِسْتِقَامَةِ. After the great qualities, you'll find that the great Imam Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, speaking about our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, the great qualities he was given when the message of Allah, of course, was sent on this great mission of actualizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's message, in which Allah gave to his Prophet this tremendous mission to enlighten the people of what pleases our Lord, and enlightening them of the purpose of their existence and the purpose of their creation. As you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam, they mentioned all the great qualities of our Prophet ﷺ, which you'll find after a couple of minutes, inshallah, how he utilized these foundations to establish the proof against those who are in opposition. Because you'll find, after we spoke about this last night, all the great traits and praiseworthy merits of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, Shaykh al-Islam was not just mentioning that for no reason. There's a great objective of which Shaykh al-Islam is utilizing these principles, like we said, which in a minute, you'll find how he used these principles of those who were in opposition to the truth. So after he spoke about the message of Allah, notice he spoke about who? The Sahaba. So after the message of Allah was given, those great qualities of delivery, of completeness of knowledge, as the message of Allah was given, as far as the human beings are concerned, kamal al-ilm, perfection of knowledge in regards to Allah, as he says. And the message of Allah alayhi salatu wassalam was ansah lil-ummah. He was the greatest of advisors, of giving advice to his followers, to his nation. And the message of Allah was given the greatest of what? Of strength in regards to irada, and to that firm resolve in which he was given, so he could fulfill that mission. And the message of Allah was given the qualities of al-balagh al-mubin, conveying it in the clearest manner. So our Prophet ﷺ clarified the verses, because not only did Allah send the message of Allah with the greatest of all books, but the message of Allah also clarified it in the clearest manner. So it wasn't just giving us the verses and that's it. Rather, the message of Allah clarified the meanings of those verses in the best way, so the people can know what Allah intended for those verses and those ayat, and also what comes to the authentic sunnah, how he wanted to be understood. As we know, Allah Ta'ala, not only did he send his messenger with the verses, but also sent the message of Allah to clarify to the people in a manner in which Allah intended those ayats to be understood. So the message of Allah clarified it in the clearest manner, and he delivered it in the most perfect form, which pleased Allah Ta'ala. So it's not only the message of Allah, as you'll find the Shaykh al-Islam, before he starts speaking about the Sahaba, notice he said, وَمَعَ وُجُودَ الْقُدْرَةِ التَّامَّةِ وَالْإِرَادَةِ الْجَازِمَةِ يَجِبُ وُجُودُ الْمُرَادِ فعلم قطعا أن ما بينه من أمر الإيمان بالله واليوم الآخر حصل به مراده من البيان وما أراده من البيان هو مطابق لعلمه وعلمه بذلك هو أكمل العلوم فكل من ظن أن غير الرسول أعلم بهذه منه أو أكمل بيان منه أو أحرص على هدي الخلق منه فهو من الملحدين لا من المؤمنين. He said, despite of this perfect ability that the Messenger of Allah was given, according with the human beings, of course, and that firm resolve of what the Messenger of Allah intended, he says, due to the fact that these characteristics are present within this individual, alayhi salatu wasalam, he says it's obligatory for there to be present an intended meaning. So the Messenger of Allah also clarified that. So it says, فَعَلِمَ قَطْعًا. So it is known most definitely and unequivocally that what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ clarified of the affairs concerning faith with Allah and the day of resurrection, that which was intended of the meaning had what? Had been attained. Meaning the Messenger of Allah clarified it and he what? And he allowed that manner to be fulfilled. So it's not only that the Messenger of Allah was given these characteristics just to have them. He was given it so the people can know what Allah wanted for those verses to be understood and in a manner how they're supposed to be understood. So the Messenger of Allah what? Did that. Especially in the most important of all matters, which is the foundation of faith in Allah and the day of resurrection, in which was intended of clarification taking place. And what the Messenger of Allah what Allah had intended of clarification, then it is agreement with the knowledge of what Allah, of course, sent with the Messenger of Allah, and it was in accordance with the knowledge of the Messenger of Allah what he was granted from Allah. So what we know based upon all these foundations is that the Messenger of Allah was given the knowledge which is most complete of all knowledges, meaning the knowledge that's going to rectify the human beings in a manner that will cause rectification in their existence in this world as well as in the hereafter. However, notice that Shaykh al-Islam was saying that this is what's binding upon every Muslim to believe, that the Messenger of Allah has these great characteristics. Why is he mentioning this? We're going to elaborate in a minute. He said, for everyone that thinks other than the Messenger of Allah is more knowledgeable than him, or someone other than the Messenger of Allah is more knowledgeable than him in regards to Allah, or that entity, or that book, or that leader, or that individual, no matter who it is, or that individual is more complete in clarification, meaning as far as its delivery than the Messenger of Allah, and that individual was more diligent of guiding the creation more than the Messenger of Allah, then he is from the mulhideen. He is those who is upon great deviation and disbelief, and he is not from the believers. Notice that Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, وَالصَّحَابَةُ وَالتَّابِعُونَ لَهُمْ بِإِحْسَانٍ وَمَنْ سَلَكَ سَبِيلَ السَّلَفِ وَهُمْ فِي هَذَا الْبَابِ عَلَى سَبِيلِ الْإِسْتِقَامَةِ. Now the companions and those who follow the companions with perfection, you'll find that those who embark the path of the pious predecessors in regards to this affair, notice that they are upon uprightness and sound belief, and he's speaking about the companions and those who followed that from the tabi'een. And those who embark upon their path, know for sure they are upon uprightness in regard to this affair. Qala Shaykh. So you'll find that another argument that Shaykh al-Islam is about to establish, he used the companions. He said, those who believe in the Messenger of Allah, a correct faith, and those who followed the companions, who are the tabi'un, all the way up to the day of resurrection, those who embark upon their path and believe the religion of how they believe in regards to what we're speaking now, know for sure they are upon uprightness in this affair what we're speaking about. He's talking about, of course, the matter pertaining to the names and attributes of Allah. So, you'll find that the great Imam of Aqidah, Muhammad Aman al-Jabi, rahimahullah, that he says about this particular statement. He said, this is obligatory upon every Muslim to understand, that the companions, they were upon uprightness and sound faith, without any mistakes in this regard. What is he speaking about? He's speaking about the affair of belief, and the affairs of belief that's connected with Allah. And the affairs that's connected with Allah as far as His name, His attributes, and those affairs that's speaking about our Lord. That the companions were upon uprightness and sound faith in this regard. And those who embark upon their path, even if it came in later times. He said, مَعْمَ تَأَخْرَ بِالزَّمَنِ فَهُوَ عَلَى سَبِيلِ الْإِسْتِقَامَةِ. Even if you come in the later times, and if you remain firm upon what they were upon, then know for sure you're upon the path of uprightness. For that reason, now this is what the great Imam goes on to say. لذلك لا ينبغي يستوحش من وفقه الله للاستقامة على منهج السلف الصالح لقلة السالكين. SubhanAllah, seems like as if this message right here is speaking about what's going on today at this moment. The great Imam Shaykh Muhammad Aman al-Jabi, he said, it is not befitting that you feel lonely. Of who Allah gives tawfiq, gives proper understanding, is success for the one who wants to be upright upon the methodology of the righteous, pious predecessors. He said, due to the small amount of people who embark it, or the little of those who will aid of this methodology. He says, especially in today's times. He's talking about maybe 20, 30 years ago. What would he say now? He said, in these days, in these current times. ولا ينبغي ينخدع بكثرة الهالكين الذين خرجوا عن هذا الخط. It's not befitting that the people become beguiled or fooled by the majority or vast majority of those who are destroyed. Those who went outside of this line, meaning this path. He said, no doubt, أنهم بالنسبة للجمهور في هذا الوقت وبعد هذا الوقت يكثر الشر ويقل الخير تصديقا لخبر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. It's as if Shaykh Muhammad Aman al-Jami is speaking about this moment that we're in right now. He said, no doubt, in regards to the majority in this time, he's talking about that time maybe 30 years ago, rahimahullah. He said, no doubt in regards to the majority in this time and after this time, evil will become abundant. Yakthur ash-shar, and good will become minute. As a confirmation for what the Messenger of Allah informed the authentic narration, the hadith of Anas ibn Malik, ما من عام إلا والذي بعده شر منه حتى تلقوا ربكم. He said, there's not a year that will pass except that which the year that will follow will be more evil than the one it preceded, until you meet your Lord. And that comes in the narration of Anas ibn Malik, and that authentic chain, where Anas ibn Malik, those group of people came to him, complaining, فشكونا إليه ما نلقى من الحجاج فقال اصبروا فإنه لا يأتي عليكم زمان إلا الذي بعده شر منه حتى تلقوا ربكم سمعته من نبيكم. He said, Anas ibn Malik, those group of people came to him, and he said, we were complaining about the harm we were receiving from the Hajjaj or the Yusuf al-Thaqafi. And he said, be patient. For verily there will not be a time that will come upon you except what will come after is more evil than that one. He says that it will be like this until you meet your Lord. So for this reason, Shaykh Muhammad Aman al-Jabi is explaining the line of which in Hamawiyyah was praising the companions, and that the person who see the majority or the vast majority embarking upon corruption and evil, not to feel lonely, despite of how less of those who embarking upon the correct path. However, there's another reason why he mentioned this matter, which we'll mention momentarily. Because like we said, keep in mind, don't lose the sight of why he's mentioning this. If you look in the page before, Shaykh al-Islam is talking about the Messenger of Allah and all the praiseworthy traits he was given. Of, as we said, number one, if you look in your book, what was the first trait? That the Messenger of Allah والسلام, was given perfect knowledge in regards to Allah, which Allah granted him, of course. He was given kamal ilm. And the Messenger of Allah was given that qudra tamma, that perfect ability of delivery as far as the human being, in regards to the human beings. He was given a qudra tamma. He was given perfect ability in delivery. And he was given an iradat al-jazima. He was given that firm resolve also to carry it out in a perfect manner. And that the Messenger of Allah was the most great of advisors for this ummah. He was ansahu lil ummah. He was the greatest of those of what? Advice for this ummah. What does all of this entail? It entails what, everyone? That the Messenger of Allah, when he was given the mission, he also was given the qualities to make the people understand what Allah intended. And what Allah Ta'ala wanted those verses in a manner for it to be understood. He was also given that ability to clarify in the perfect manner. Why Shaykh al-Islam mentioning this? Then he mentions another what? Key point, which is what, everyone? The companions. How the Messenger of Allah, as we mentioned last class, revelation, the Messenger of Allah was given in the best way, from the greatest of all, from the greatest. As far as in the deity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed his revelation, the greatest, and rather Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the most perfect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to the most greatest of all angels. And the Messenger of Allah was the greatest of all human beings and prophets. And the greatest of all what? Of creation in regards to them. And the Messenger of Allah, when Allah sent the revelation, he gave it at the best time for those to carry it out and possess it of knowledge. So, revelation was given to the greatest of angels. Jibreel alayhi salam. And Jibreel and Allah Ta'ala also gave it to the greatest of all human beings, who's Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he gave it in the best of all times. So the revelation was given in a manner which was perfect. And in a perfect, what we say, in regards to the human beings. Not in regards as far as in regards to be a deity. That's not what we speak about. We talk about the Messenger of Allah was the greatest of all men, as far as the qualities of men in which he was granted from Allah. And from those qualities, what Shaykh al-Islam mentioned here, if you look in your book, which is what we said, everyone, clarification, as far as his delivery, as far as his diligence, and him having that firm resolve to carry out the mission and to deliver the message so the people understood it properly. And giving clarification of how Allah wanted it to be understood. Because like we said, everyone, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this revelation, Allah knew that the people would differ in regards to its understanding. That's the reason why the Messenger of Allah also united the people in regards to those verses and in regards to this authentic sunnah of how it's supposed to be understood. Due to that fact, Shaykh al-Islam then goes on to say, if you look in your books, he said, "Sahabatu, of course, and those who follow them with perfection, and also those who follow the path of the pious predecessors, that they are upon uprightness in this regard." Now look what Shaykh al-Islam is about to mention. Because a person would say, okay, what's the point of mentioning all this information? So listen. Now if you go to the next page, this is what he says. وَأَمَّا الْمُنْحَرِفُونَ عَنْ طَرِيقِهِمْ فَهُمْ ثَلَاثُ طَوَائِفٍ أهل التخييل وأهل التأويل وأهل التجهيل. فأهل التخييل هم المتفلسفة ومن سلك سبيلهم من متكلم ومتصوف، فإنهم يقولون إنما ذكره الرسول من أمر الإيمان بالله واليوم الآخر إنما هو تخييل للحقائق لينتفع به الجمهور، لا أنه بين به الحق ولا هدى به الخلق ولا أوضح الحقائق. Now Shaykh al-Islam is mentioning to everyone here, what's the reason or why he mentioned this fundamental principle? That is obligatory upon every Muslim to believe. For every Muslim, if they was to embrace and understand these points properly, they would not deviate to a correct, they would not deviate away from the correct path, embarking upon a path of destruction. Like we said, everyone, these matters and these principles, they're supposed to be implemented to keep you firm upon that one path of truth, so you will not deviate to the side paths or the side road or those side paths in the road that will call you, or rather it will lead you to destruction. And when we say destruction, everyone, we mean it to the hellfire. So now Shaykh al-Islam is talking about those other paths. Now listen what he says. As for those who deviated from that path, he said there are three groups. Number one is Ahl Takhyil, people of Takhyil. Takhyil is like an illusion, something delusional. And how many delusional people are out here these days? But like Allah, there's a lot of delusional people out here. And you see it, and we mentioned and we see it every day, how many people are totally delusional. And they are in the state and manner that affairs that they think is a reality, in actuality is not a what? Reality, it's fake. That's what Shaykh al-Islam is speaking about. He's saying Ahl Takhyil, people that are what? Delusional. Or they like to now think of affairs that are just merely imaginative. Imaginative. He said, then you have the people of false, distorted meanings from the Muslims. That's the second group. Then you have the people of Tajheel, Jahl. Now let's talk about the first category, or the first people. He said, Ahl Takhyeel, the people of what? Takhyeel. Takhyeel is imaginative. People of affairs that they deal with are merely imaginative. It's in their mind. Who are they speaking about? He said, number one is those who've been affected by philosophy, and those who embark upon their path of the people of rhetoric. Now listen to this. And the Sufis, and the Mutasawwif. Now this is what Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say. Now keep in mind the character or the affairs that we mentioned a couple of minutes ago, right everyone? Talking about the message of Allah, talking about the Sahaba, right? So this is what he's about to say now. So now he's bringing the groups that oppose those principles. So he says, فَإِنَّهُمْ يَقُولُونَ, verily they say, meaning the people of Takhyil, what the Messenger of Allah mentioned of the affairs of faith in Allah and the day of resurrection, he said, verily is just mere imaginative of those realities. In order for the majority or the common folk to benefit from. Not because the Messenger of Allah actually clarified the truth. Nor did he guide by it the creation. Nor did the Messenger of Allah clarify those true affairs. What is he speaking about? Shaykh al-Islam now is speaking about, number one, just hear me out, the people of Takhyil, the people who are delusional, or people of what they so-called now want to believe in affairs that are imaginative. What is he speaking about? He said, number one, they're the people that's been affected by philosophy. Why is he saying that? Because if you flip back the page, everything that he mentioned, you know what they say? The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not the what? We don't need him. Rather, we need something else outside of what the Messenger of Allah brought in order for the people to understand affairs concerning Allah. So we have to use our intellects and minds in what we feel, in what is suitable for the intellect. So everything you're saying here about the Messenger of Allah, these praiseworthy traits are what? Negated. So that's the reason why he's saying the first group of those who've been affected by philosophy, making their mind or their intellect or their rationality as a foundation, they're saying that takes precedence even though the Messenger of Allah was given those praiseworthy qualities. And even though the Sahaba, those who inherited that knowledge from the Messenger of Allah, were upon perfect knowledge in regards to what they received directly from the Messenger of Allah and what they apply. Despite of you saying that, we don't apply that. Why? Because our intellect takes precedence over all of those affairs. So as if they're saying what? Their knowledge is deficient. The Messenger of Allah was deficient. The Sahaba were deficient. And what he was given of those qualities we don't consider that anything that was insignificant. what takes place over all that is what's our foundation, which is what? Greek philosophy. So that's the reason why Shaykh al-Islam is calling the people what? Delusional. Now you see why he's calling them delusional. And while they rely on affairs that's just mere what? Speculative and imaginative. Something that's just imaginative. Because at the end of the day, how is it that you now using your mind or your intellect in order to judge of what Allah affirms for himself or what Allah negates for himself? That's affair that's what? Unacceptable. That's what Shaykh al-Islam is speaking about here. So that's the first group. So he said, because now he's going to speak about the Sufis. He's saying in regards to those who are what? Our faith in Allah and the day of resurrection. He said the second people are the people of what? Of the Sufiyun, which we're going to talk about them in a minute. So, who are the munharifun? He said those who deviated from this path, meaning those who followed the other paths. He said, number one, the people of philosophy. They are people that follow their delusion or their imagination. People of takhyil, people that follow their imagination. And those who've been affected by them. Then Shaykh al-Islam, we're going to talk about the first group. Again, let's go back everyone. The people of takhyil. So the first group from the takhyil, the people that are delusional or those who follow speculative or imaginative affairs or things that's just a mere affair of their imagination. He said they are the philosophers. Those who've been affected by some of them. Everybody's sipping tea, so I'm writing. So in regards to that, كاعتقاد المعتزلة والجهمية. He said, for example, the i'tiqad of the Mu'tazila and the Jahmiyyah. They are the first of what Shaykh al-Islam is intended by those who are considered the people of imagination, meaning those who follow their delusions. كاعتقاد, like the belief of the Mu'tazila and the Jahmiyyah. And he says, in some, of course, of those who are affected by Sufiyyah. For verily at the heads of the Mutasawwifa, at the heads of them, for example, the individuals who believe that Allah is one with the creation, or the creation is unified with Allah. So number one, everyone, is the people of philosophy. Number two is who, everyone? The people of the Sufis. That's number two. Some of those who've been affected by Sufiyyah, rather the heads of the a'yan, such as those who believe that Allah is unified with the creation is unified with Allah. Isn't those affairs that are considered delusional, everyone? And someone who believes that Allah is unified with the creation, and the creation is unified with Allah, those affairs are just mere what? Imaginative. And for one to truly believe that is truly delusional. And he's a person that's following his mere imagination. Rather, there's no reality to what this individual truly believes. So what we're saying, number one is the people of philosophy. Number two is those who believe that Allah is unified with this existence, meaning the creation, such as the people or the heads. His name was Ibn Arabi. His name was Muhammad ibn Ali al-Ta'i al-Arabi al-Andalusi, Muhyiddin. He is the head of those who believe that Allah was unified with the creation, or that the creation was unified with Allah. And his name was Ibn Arabi. If you want to remember his name, is Muhammad ibn Ali. Muhammad ibn Ali. Muhammad ibn Ali is known as Muhyiddin. Muhyiddin Arabi. Al-Hatimi al-Ta'i. He is the first individual who came with the ideology that Allah is unified with the creation, and that the creation is unified with Allah. And the reason why you'll find that those who are upon the greatest of kufr as regards to Sufis or the ghulat, the extremists from amongst them, you'll notice that they worship anything. And that everything, why? Because they believe that everything around them is what? Allah. Why? Because Allah has become unified with it. To the point where you can worship even a woman. Yes, you bring even the book, I have it. It's called Hadihi Sufiya. You can worship a woman. Why? Everything is Allah. Everything is Allah. And Allah is one with the creation. These affairs are mere what? Imaginative. These are affairs, no reality to it. Some like what? That's why they're just merely people of what? Imagination. No reality. At the heads is Ibn Arabi and Ibn al-Farid. There's another individual, and I'll speak about in a minute. His name is also Ibn al-Farid wa Ibn al-Sab'een. I'll give it to everyone after the class. Wa Ibn al-Ajiba. These people have been affected by the methodology of the philosophers, as far as Ibn al-Ajiba and Ibn al-Sab'een. And I'll talk about him in a minute. Just to sum up everything, you'll find that these people, that they are called the people of takhyil, people that follow their imagination. Nothing is a reality. And you'll find that those who mutafaqqiha have become affected. And we'll talk about that in a minute, the meaning of al-faqih wal-mutafaqqih. He said, based upon these two categories, who are people of imagination, he said the reason why he's saying this is because the people of philosophy do not give glorification, nor do they give any precedence to what? To nubuwah. Or some of them don't, if not majority. That the affair of nubuwah, that affair does not have that true value within ourselves, but we make that the source of guidance. We remove that out of its way, and we put in its place our minds. So that's what the philosophers say. In regards to the Sufis, now listen to this. Why are they called people of imagination? He said, because فَيَزْعُمُونَ أَنَّ بَابَ النُّبُوَّةِ ضَيِّقٌ. These type of people, in which the people now, the second category, he said you'll find that they believe that prophethood is restricted. And that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ did not have knowledge of anything except by a middleman. That middleman was Jibreel, or Jibreel. He said there's an affair that's greater than mere prophethood. What's greater than prophethood? Walaya. Walaya is greater than nubuwah. And it's more what? It's more vast. Because the wali, he can now reach the levels in which he doesn't need a middleman like the Messenger of Allah needed. The Messenger of Allah needed Jibreel. The wali, however, does not need that middleman. He goes directly to the preserved tablet and receives information directly, without growing past the middleman, nor needing the Messenger of Allah والسلام, and following his guidance. These people are the heads of the Mutasawwifah, and they call themselves so-called awliya. So you find that all of these affairs are mere what? Imaginative. These are affairs, these people are truly what? In actuality, what we've been mentioning for the past 20 minutes. These are people who are truly what? They're delusional. They're following a figment of their imagination. There's no reality to none of this. Now you see why Shaykh al-Islam called them people of what? People of imagination. Just following some affairs that are just merely delusions. Delusions of grandeur, if you want to say. People that do not follow reality. That's the reason why he's calling these groups, or this group specifically, people of imagination. Is it clear, everyone? And that the people of imagination break down to how many groups, everyone? 2. So if I ask you this next class, you'll be able to answer? Like I said, brothers and sisters, these are not lectures. These are classes. You have to write these down and memorize and study and review. These are not just mere classes and lectures. Everybody sits on the wall, chills, and let the me do all the work, and everybody goes home and goes to sleep and relax. No. The teacher explains, and the other 50% goes in with the students. They go home, review, memorize, and review. Then I test you, because I will give a test. So like I said, those people are people of imagination, break down into 2 groups. They are called the people of philosophy, number 1. Number 2, people of what? Of the Sufis, from the heads of them. Why are they called so-called people of imagination? Because like we mentioned and said, they believe prophethood is restricted. Why? Because the Messenger of Allah needed a middleman. Who's the middleman? Jibreel. The walaya, or the people so-called that attain, based upon the definition of the Sufis, that walaya is on a higher level than prophethood. And it's more vast. And that al-wali yasilu ila darajati annahu yutali'u fi al-lawh al-mahfuz. He reaches the level where he can even look directly in the preserved tablet. وَيَأْخُذُ الْمَعْلُومَاتِ مِنْ غَيْرِ أَنْ يَحْتَاجِ إِلَى رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. And he can now attain information without needing the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. From the heads of the Sufis who believe this. And they call themselves awliya. The word awliya goes back to the book that we teach the people every Sunday after Asr. The awliya break into two types. You have the awliya of Allah and you have the awliya of the devils. You'll find that those who take their knowledge and those who take as a source of guidance and that they restrict themselves to following it, meaning what came from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they're called the awliya of Allah. Those who claim that they don't need the Messenger of Allah because we can take our knowledge directly from the preserved tablet, these are the awliya of the devils. Rather, they are the awliya of the devils from those that's upon great levels of deviation and disbelief. May Allah preserve us. From those who now, from the philosophers, and those from the awliya, they think that they are more knowledgeable in regards to Allah and the day of resurrection than the prophets. And at the head of them is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those who came before. Because like we said, everyone, if you look at the methodology of all the messengers and prophets, you will not find that philosophy or Greek philosophy was needed in order for one to understand revelation. Not from Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, nor for any of the prophets before. Nor any of the prophets say that you need something that's foreign or outside that has no connection with Islam or no connection with the message of the prophets, what they were sent with, in regards to revelation, in order for you to be rightly guided. This was not something that none of the prophets came with. Nor you'll find the message of the Sufis the same thing, that there will be an individual that will come after a specific prophet. And that person said, now, you don't need the prophets. Rather, you can now reach a level on your own of attaining a level that's higher than the prophets. This is something that was not known. Rather, this was something that was what? Rejected, and it was considered foreign. Had no connection with Islam and its origins. Rather, its connections with what? With the early pagans. And with the people of disbelief who were deeply engrossed in it from the Greek philosophers. That's where it originated from, and as a result of it, that's the reason why those who follow it are considered from the awliya, the devils. So you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam mentions, and let's mention quickly what he says. Let's read the last part. He goes on to say, ثُمَّ هُمْ عَلَى الْقِسْمَيْنِ. He said these two people are upon two categories. He said, منهم من يقول إن الرسول لم يعلم الحقائق على ما هي عليه. From amongst them that they say, indeed the Messenger of Allah did not know the true affairs or the true reality of affairs upon which they're supposed to be. He didn't know that. He said, they also say, he said, ويقولون إن من الفلاسفة الإلهية من علمها. And they say, verily is from divine, now listen to this, divine philosophy for those who do know the reality. Divine philosophy? Wow. وكذلك من الأشخاص الذين يسمونهم أولياء من علمها. So, Shaykh al-Islam is talking about the first group from the people of follow their imagination. He said, those from the philosophers. Then he's going to mention, likewise, those people who call themselves awliya. Who's he speaking about? The Sufis. He says they also know it. They knew the knowledge that the Messenger of Allah did not know. Or they know the knowledge either he hid it or he did not know it at all. And he says, وَيَزْعُمُونَ أَنَّ مِنَ الْفَلَاسِفَةِ أَوِ الْأَوْلِيَاءِ مَنْ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِاللَّهِ. He says, then they claim that they are from philosophers and awliya, he's talking about the Sufis again, who's more knowledgeable about Allah and the day of resurrection than the prophets. These are the heads of the mulhideen. These are the heads of the people who are heretics and part of great deviation from the philosophers and the Batiniyah. We talked about them a couple of lessons ago. Who are the Batiniyah, everyone? Those who believe that the Kitab and Sunnah, that there was an apparent meaning that was only suitable for the common folk, whether there was a hidden meaning that was only for those who were exclusive. They were called the Batiniyah. And they are different types. And some are from the Batiniyah who believe that the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala, the majority of the knowledge that the people, the common folk believe, which is called Sharia, that was suitable for them due to the fact that they have not achieved a certain level. Where if you so-called now enhance your understanding, you will now come to the conclusion that those ayat or those verses or that so-called authentic sunnah, as they believe, has a hidden meaning to it. But only certain people can attain that knowledge and understand it. Those people are called the Batiniyah, as we talked about before. He said, from those from the Falasifa and the Batiniyah, now listen to what Shaykh al-Islam is explaining to everyone, that the Batiniyah also break down to groups. You have the Batiniyah to Shia, the Batiniyah to Shia, and you have the Batiniyah to Sufiya. So the Batiniyah to Sufiya, as we explain right now, notice that he breaks them down to two groups, and this is where we'll stop at. The Batiniyah to Shia, the Batiniyah from the deviant group from the Shia, they are called the Ismailiyah. The Ismailiyah. Ismailiyah. Ismailiyah are from the Batiniyah, from the Shia. Because the Shia also have deviant sects from the Batiniyah. Then you have the second group from the Batiniyah, who are called the Batiniyah to Sufiya. And they are the group that believe that Allah is unified with the creation. Such as the group of Ibn Arabi, al-Ta'i, which is Muhammad ibn Ali or Muhyiddin, Ibn Arabi al-Ta'i al-Hatibi, al-Andalusi. هؤلاء باطنيون. He said, they also, meaning the Batiniyah, you'll find that they gather between philosophy and they gather between Batiniyah. They gather between so-called philosophy and Batiniyah. That they brought them together. Two ideologies of Satan, of Shaitan, and they gather between them. Which made their level of deviation worse. Is it clear, everyone? Now listen to what Shaykh al-Islam, I'll just read this and we won't explain it. He said, وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَقُولُ بَلِ الرَّسُولُ عَلِمَهَا لَكَنْ لَمْ يُبَيِّنْهَا. From amongst them who say the Messenger of Allah had knowledge of it, he was aware of these affairs, but he didn't clarify it. Meaning he kept it what? Kept it hidden. He didn't tell the people. Basically he what? Failed his mission. He failed his mission. Because we know the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, he was commanded to convey everything. And that he was not, rather he was what? Obliged to convey everything he had, and he did not what? Conceal it. As we know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, Ya ayyuha rasul, بلغ ما أنزل إليك من ربك وإن لم تفعل فما بلغت رسالته والله يعصمك من الناس. He said, O messenger, he says, inform everything that has been revealed from your Lord. بلغ ما أنزل إليك من ربك. Convey everything has been revealed to you from your Lord. And if you do not do that, then you have not informed the people. You haven't completed your mission. And we know that the Messenger of Allah what? Fulfilled it. However, based upon the ideologies of these people, from them is that we need something better than the Messenger of Allah in order to comprehend those affairs or intricate affairs concerning our Lord. From them, as like we mentioned and said, those matters are what we just said, those matters, we need something foreign. That's basically what one will say. We need something in its origins not connected with Islam. We need something outside that opposes it in order for us to understand it properly. Does it make any sense? It does? Now, as far as, is it correct, I meant to say. Better question. Is it correct? That's basically what one is saying. And all these are matters of which we could clarify based upon the Sufis and the beliefs of the philosophers. All these matters in its origin are all what? Foreign. They have no connection with Islam in its origin. Rather, it comes from the enemies and something outside. So why would someone use a method of the enemies of Islam in order to understand Islam? Especially the most vital of all knowledge, which is affairs connected with Allah itself. Which doesn't make absolute any sense. So that's what Shaykh al-Islam is what? Clarifying it. Is it clear, everyone? Fine. I know some of the brothers were eating a little bit, so we didn't have time to take advantage of the time that we wanted. But that's what Shaykh al-Islam was mentioning here. He was saying that, number one, the people of their imagination, or utilizing their imagination, you can see it clearly. He said, why? Because all these matters have no reality to it. Whether it be for those who are philosophers and use a philosophy in order to understand Islam properly, or people who say that you can attain a level which you do not need the middleman anymore. Like how the message of Allah needed Jibreel. So you can exclude the middleman, Jibreel, and you can go directly to the preserved tablet and attain information directly from it. These affairs are all what? Satanic, and they're all what? Imaginative. It's just a figment of one's imagination. Rather, it's a satanic imagination. All imaginative affairs, that's satanic, diabolical affairs that the shaitan has tricked and fooled a lot of people of falling into it, which Allah Ta'ala tested certain individuals in which they became misguided by following these type of what? Paths. Any questions about the lesson anymore? Follow.
What's the categories of the Sufiya, the categories there?
Now we was talking about the Batiniyah, which was here for last class. Batiniyah, a Shia, and Batiniyah Sufiya. The Batiniyah in itself, they were people of great what? Distortions. And they used ta'wil, the affair of distortions, as their basis. And so many affairs. For example, in regards to them, you have the Batiniyah from, we mentioned last class, from the followers of Hamdan Pirmit, he was here. The Qalamita were a Greek deviant sect of Batiniyah. The Qalamita was the followers of Hamdan Pirmit. Hamdan Pirmit. Talked about him before. To the point where we mentioned, it said that the Nation of Islam actually started the group taken from the Qalamita. You'll find the similarities of the belief of the Qalamita is similar to what? The Nation of Islam. As far as their beliefs, because they believed that Hamdan Pirmit was Allah. Similar to what? The Nation of Islam believed. When they believed Farad Muhammad was God or Allah in the form of a human being. That's number one. Number two, the Qalamita also believe that the affairs of Ta'wil, or with regards to Hajj, or Salah, or prayer, or all those matters are what? Different. Where they twisted the meanings of it from them. For example, that you'll find that those who follow the Nation of Islam, when they pray, they don't pray like how we pray. They raise their hands in this manner, and they distort the meaning of the prayer where they do not take it down. I ain't sit down. Where they do not pray how the message of Allah taught his followers how to pray. They do it in a different manner. They raise their hands, and they do it in a manner that is what? Totally in opposition to what is known of how it's supposed to pray. You'll find that they fast the month of Ramadan in a different time. And if I'm not mistaken, what is it, the 25th of Christmas? The 24th of December?
Christmas Eve, they fast that next day, yeah. That one day.
That one day, that's it? You'll find all types of affairs that you'll find that are twisted. A lot of these affairs came from the Qalamita, where they took certain matters in text and they twisted them. For example, the followers of Hamdan ibn Qimr, they believe that you don't have to pray 5 times a day. The meaning of prayer to them is ziyarat al-mashahid, or ziyarat, visiting the grave of the dead, or those who are prominent, from the awliya. That's the meaning of what? Excuse me. That's the meaning of Hajj. That's the meaning of Hajj. Prayer is to make dua to the dead, to those awliya. This is what the Batiniyah believe, the Batiniyah. So dua is for the dead. You make dua to the dead, call them the dead, from the so-called mashayikh or awliya, or those who are close to Allah, as they call them. And the meaning of fasting is keeping their secrets hidden. So it's not fasting the month of Ramadan. So what I'm trying to say is that how are they similar when they take those different affairs and twist its meaning to what? Something else. You'll find that they're called the Batiniyah. He said that's the reason why those who are upon Batiniyah never pray in the Masjid. You'll find that they had so-called ma'abid, places of worship that resembled Masjid, but they weren't Masjid. He said, and when they journeyed outside their lands to pray in the Khalij, or the lands of the Arab, or the Islamic countries, they'll go inside the Masjid because they don't have nowhere else to pray. So he said they'll come inside the Masjid and they'll play around with the aqidah of the Muslims. Play around with it and mock it. He said, so they have their own places of worship and they believe that it's not befitting to pray in the Masjid of the Muslims. But however, when they come to their lands, they what? They pray there. But in its origin, they don't what? It's not befitting for them to pray in the Masjid. Even though outside looking in, you would think that they are considered what? Muslim, and that it resembles the so-called what? Masjid. You'll find that in certain lands. Even in the UK, I've seen it. I've seen some of it. From the different temples of the Sufis, and from those which you so-called from the Muslims. Even if you look to the nation of Islam, those who became Muslim, who are naive in the beginning, they think that the temple is a what? What do you think the temple of the nation of Islam is? They think it's a mosque. So a lot of people think it's what? It's connected with what? With a masjid. Exactly. But in actuality, is it a masjid? No, it isn't. It's not permissible to pray there. Not permissible to pray in the temple of the nation of Islam. But outside looking in, for those who are naive and don't have knowledge of the affair, what do they think? Well, they're Muslims. And you can pray there. It's a masjid, right? That's just a temple, they call it. It's a temple, and I think, if not mistaken, they call it a mosque. They say mosque?
Like a mosque with a number.
Mosque with a number, but in actuality, they call it a temple.
Mosque number 12.
Mosque number 12 with a number. But similar to that, like we said, keep in mind, all of these people had taken their knowledge from the Batiniyah. They all goes back to the Batiniyah. Same thing. The Batiniyah did the exact same thing. And like we said, even some of them talking about how the day of resurrection and the hereafter is a figment of one's imagination. Some of them believe that the day of resurrection, where it is a spiritual affair, not physical. And they come with all different types of weird beliefs. From them, that they say it's here on earth. And you hear this among some of them. Some of that the day of resurrection, like how the nation of Islam believe. What did we say last class? They believe that the day of resurrection, there isn't any. That once you die, that's it. It's it. And that the second coming is the mothership. And Farrakhan just recently said this. Like in an election, like last year or 2 years ago, recently. In the middle of the speech, he said, and I seen the mothership. He still believes this nonsense. And exactly what Shaykh is trying to say here is exactly what applies with Farrakhan. He said people of what? Of their imagination. Delusional people. Delusional. And people follow this nonsense. They really believe that there will be a mothership that's going to come and rescue the black man from the tyranny of the oppression of the white man or those who oppressed them. Not realizing, brothers and sisters, that the origin of slavery in Africa originally came from black people. Yes, it did. Read the history. What happened was black people were enslaving black people. They had wars with each other. They had wars. There was wars between them. So they took them as captives. They took them as captives and they sold them to the Europeans. Look to your history. So, based upon the ideologies, aren't we supposed to hate the oppressors? So why not hate them too? They're black. And they're the ones that actually did the starting of what? Slavery, to the point where they even said monetarily they still benefit from this day from the slavery, from the slave trade they did back then. They still receiving funds and money off of it to this day. So you have to read your history. Read your history. You'll find that these affairs are recorded. But anyway, the point of why we mentioned the Batiniyah, brothers and sisters, the reason why the Batiniyah, like we mentioned, is that the Batiniyah had some weird ideologies, extremely weird. And like we said, you'll find the similarities of the Nation of Islam and other Muslims from the different deviant sects, from the Sufis, from the Naqshbandiyah, from the Hamawiyyah, and other than them, who's not permissible to play in their temples and their so-called ma'abid. Even though outside looking in, you really think that they're what? Muslims. You really think they are. But they're on something totally different. And those massages such as the Ahmadiyya, from the followers of Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani. It's not permissible to pray in those massages. But outside, thinking, you would think what? They're Muslims, and it's a masjid. And they're on something totally different.
I know Pat Muhammad group, they mix on them quick.
Say it again.
Pat Muhammad group out there, they mix them just quick. You used to go to Timber up there in Winfield. They used to go up there with them.
Absolutely. And they used to join them in prayer?
They go up there with them and celebrate with them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the Ahmadiyya joined in with the Nation of Islam?
They was all, like you say, the nation back there were Muslim too. And they were going doing things.
Oh, the Nation of Islam thought they were Muslim.
Yeah, not the nation, this new group, Farrakhan got his people. Claire Muhammad now.
Oh, Sister Claire Muhammad. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Not like you said, Farrakhan, like you said, he went that part where you say now, he's above the prophet. That's part of that message.
Absolutely. Same thing.
And the message.
He says, I'm above prophethood. What is the Shaykh Islam talking about here? He said there are people that say they have reached a level that is higher than what? Prophethood. Same exact things. So you see, what Shaykh Islam is mentioned in his book, it applies for today. What he's saying here, even though people think Abdur Razzaq, you're wasting your time teaching people this, to me it's nothing difficult about understanding this information. It just takes a little bit of thinking. And I think that we live in days and times, a lot of people don't really want to use their brain now anymore. But if you do, they want something quick and get in and out. That's how we become now. Nobody wants to really take time out to use their brain to exercise it. And if they use that, we find that these affairs are easy to comprehend. And how they're applicable to this day. All you have to do is click on YouTube and you'll find that everything he's saying applies easily. So we'll stop here, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.